Welcome to Independent News Network, your trusted source for unbiased, in-depth coverage of global events. Stay informed, stay independent. Subscribe now. We're going to be doing a reaction video on Tom Homan defends ICE masquerades and collateral arrests. Let's dig in.
I know George Stephanopoulos is one of your best friends.
Mm-hmm.
He convicted you on television,
Mm-hmm.
okay, of a $50,000 bribe. Stephanopoulos did this on ABC. The vice president, J.D. Vance, defended you. And I thought he did so pretty well, because due process is important. Do you want to clarify anything about that situation?
I didn't take $50,000 from anybody.
Okay. How did that get into the mainstream, do you think?
I have no idea. Look, there's been hit pieces on me since I came back to this administration. There's got to be 30, 40 hit pieces on me about how I'm involved with contracts and government contracts, when in fact, day one I came back, I recused myself from any discussions on any contract or any monetary decisions like that, because I used to have a company that did consulting. So I cleared myself day one. What people don't talk about is I took a significant, huge pay cut to come back and serve my nation. And I'm not enriching myself doing this job.
Does this make you angry that they're coming at you this way?
I don't care what people think about me, and never have. No, because I know who I am. I work for the greatest president in the history of this nation, in my opinion, and we're doing the right thing every day.
Okay. I got one more question, then you guys jump in.
Comment down below and tell me, how do you guys feel about Tom Homan and what he's doing with ICE?
The ICE agents that you command have been demonized as Gestapo, and they're kicking in doors and dragging people out, and their kids are crying. You've heard it all. But what I want you to explain tonight is, what are the orders of the men and women who are on these raids? What are they supposed to do?
Well, they're enforcing immigration laws as enacted by Congress. They're upholding the oath they took to enforce those laws. They're not making this up. So when the people want to attack ICE for doing what they're doing, but why don't you go scream at Congress? They wrote the law. I mean, ICE is just enforcing the law, but ICE is prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats, and the data proves it. I look at the data every morning on the way to work. I look at 22 pages of data, and the last time I looked at, a couple of days ago, when I actually looked at percentages, nearly 70% of everybody ICE arrests are public safety threats or national security threats.
What about the other 30? How do they get?
Many of them are national security threats. For instance, 3,000 Iranian nationals. Most national security threats don't have criminal histories. They're laying low to do the dirty deed. A lot of them were final orders. People who had due process at great taxpayer expense were ordered removed by a federal judge. Our job is to execute those orders and remove them. A lot of them are gang members. And so if you look at the data, and as far as the question is, okay, how about the ones that aren't national security threats, not public safety threats, not national security threats, not gang members? Who are they? They're collateral arrests. Because when the sanctuary cities force us into the neighborhood to find a bad guy, because they won't give us access to the jail, so now we got to go to the neighborhood and find him. When we find that criminal, many times they're with others who are in the country legally. We're not walking away from them. We're going to force.
Let me ask y'all a question. Where do you guys live? Do you guys live in a sanctuary city? Do you guys suffer from this same type of problem? I live in Colorado, so I deal with some of these issues myself. I don't live in the Denver and metro area. We still deal with the same things. Being in a sanctuary city, do you feel that these sanctuary cities should help or work with ICE agents in order to remove the violent criminals, the violent newcomer criminals from society? Or do you believe that don't work with them, cause mass casualties, cause collateral damage? Where you have the ICE agents coming into these towns and these cities where people don't want them there, for one. They're going to have a violent uprising against them, which is happening all across the country. Portland, Chicago, all these other places, LA. Don't you think if the city governments or the county governments or the state governments were working with ICE agents to arrest these criminals before they are let out of the jails, then you're going to avoid all the collateral damage that's taking place within these sanctuary cities. Of course, they're going to ramp up their efforts in order to go into these sanctuary cities where they know the problem's there. I'm telling you right now, if I'm a criminal and I know that I have a sanctuary city where I can go lay low in, I can break laws, I can get arrested, they let me back out, they don't notify ICE, they don't notify immigration, they don't notify anybody. If I know I can get away with all this, what do you think is going to happen?
So even if the collateral people, they are subject to deportation, even if they don't have a criminal record?
Absolutely. If they're in a country illegally, it's not okay. Bottom line is, it's a crime to enter the United States illegally, and we're not going to turn a blind eye to that.
Mr. Homan, thank you for
And,
being
if the message we want to send, Bill, is enter the country illegally, it's a crime, but don't worry about it.
Well, that's what we've had for.
But that's the message we send, that enter the country illegally, it's a crime, but don't worry about it. Unless you commit another crime, no one's looking for you, you're never going to fix this problem. People are continuing to put themselves in harm's way to come to the greatest nation on earth.
I got a couple of questions. First of all, good to see you, and thank you for being on my show on a couple of occasions. I really appreciate it. But I have to ask you, when you say, okay, you enter the country illegally, it's that cut and dry, is that consistent in your mind with what the president told America during the campaign and immediately after, that he was targeting criminals, not people who just entered illegally?
Now, Tom Homan needs to tell him, yes, Donald Trump said he's going to target the criminals first. If you entered into our country illegally, you are here illegally. There is consequences for that, plain and simple. I don't know why they got to sugarcoat this shit.
Like I just said, we are prioritizing criminal aliens, national security threats, and public safety threats. The data clearly proves it, 70%. Actually, the percentage of criminals we're arresting is higher than what the Biden administration did, even though they said they're going to concentrate on criminal aliens who are convicted of aggravated felonies. And that's just a stone cold fact. We still target criminals. They come first, worst first. But are others wrapped up? Certainly, especially in sanctuary cities where most collateral arrests occur.
I have an angle that I think is what is causing trouble on this issue and for you personally, but we're here for them. So let me get an audience question. Amy, what is your question for Mr. Homan?
Hi, Mr. Homan. I'm from Chicago. And while I do appreciate all the hard work that the ICE officers have been doing, taking the worst of the worst, it seems to become more aggressive recently, probably in the past 2 months. A couple days ago, there's a large train station down the street from my house, and there were ICE officers 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's not always affecting just them. It's affecting regular citizens too. Delays, whatever. But I'm just curious why it's become so much more aggressive, and seems in Chicago mostly.
Well, a couple of things. If it's aggressive, I don't know if I use that term, but there's 1,000% increase on attacks on ICE officers. Have you seen the media lately? There's bounties on their heads for $50,000 to kill one of them. So they're very careful in the way they do these operations. They got to protect themselves. So I want to use the term aggressive. They're using a lot more precautions when they approach somebody. Second of all, if the mayor wants less ICE agents on the streets of Chicago, then let us in the jail to arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a jail, where it's safer for Chicago residents, it's safer for the ICE agents, and it's safer for the alien. It doesn't make sense to release a public safety threat who's in the country illegally back into the public.
Think about that. Sanctuary cities arresting newcomers on crimes and then releasing them back into the community. They wouldn't do that for Americans. Americans don't get, well, I guess, I guess they probably do. I guess I probably shouldn't say that, because you have some of these sanctuary cities like Chicago, LA, New Orleans, Portland, where you pretty much can run rampant and you're going to be let right back out.
I like to say, well, we're a welcoming community. We want victims and witnesses of a crime who are illegally in the United States to feel free to come to the police without fear of working with ICE. That is a bunch of crap, because victims and witnesses of a crime don't want the bad guy in the neighborhood either.
Amy's question, though, how common is it for the Chicago authorities to release dangerous migrants back into the population?
Every day.
Common?
Every day.
You have stats on it?
Certainly we do. We got a number of detainers we issued that weren't honored. If you look at the number of criminals we wrestled off the streets of Chicago, ICE has made Chicago safer. The governor and the mayor should be calling President Trump and thanking him for taking public safety threats off that street. It makes the street safer for Chicago residents like yourself. No one's going to argue taking a criminal off the street doesn't make the community safer. I looked at the data this morning. There's over, there's about, between ICE and CBP, there's over about 530,000 removals. At 70%, you're looking at about 330,000 criminals that were removed from this country, which makes this country safer.
Could you explain why, when it comes to ICE agents, there's been this whole big deal about concealing their identity. Law enforcement officials throughout this country don't get the license to do that. They have to walk up to you. They have to identify who they are. They have to make sure it's clear. An ICE agent getting to conceal their identity is not a privilege or a situation that other law enforcement officials have. Why should ICE agents have that?
You see what Tom Homan should tell Stephen A. Smith right here is the reason they're covering their faces is because there's 1,000% increase on violence upon ICE agents. You have Democrats doxing them. You have Democrat politicians calling them Gestapo, calling them Hitler, calling them Nazis. That's why they're covering their damn faces.
I don't pretend. I don't particularly like the mask either, but name another law enforcement agency that's over 1,000% attacks on them. And name another law enforcement agency whose spouses and children have been doxxed on social media and been attacked and bullied in churches and schools. These men and women put a gun on their hip and wear a Kevlar vest to go on the streets every day, look for the worst of worst, makes this country safer. Them wearing a mask, if that protects them and protects their families, then that has to be done. No one, I remember the days some of these cities, if they weren't wearing a mask during COVID, you got reported to the police and got arrested for it. These men and women are trying to protect themselves and their families. And again, I don't like the mask. I wish there wasn't need for it. But there's not another law enforcement agency dealing with the attacks that ICE is dealing with right now. Look, immigration enforcement, I've been doing this since 1984. It's always been controversial. It's always been emotional. But people need to remember the men and women at ICE, they don't hang their heart on a hook when they go to work. They're mothers and fathers too. They have children too. And they take very, very emotional things home with them every day. You know, I've done this for over 40 years. I stood in the back of a trailer with 19 dead people who baked to death. I've talked to 9-year-old little girls that were raped multiple times by the cartels. And these men and women take that home every day. These are heroes and they're patriots, and I'm happy and I'm proud to support them.
But Mr. Homan, respectfully, I get where you're coming from. But one could retort by simply saying, you know, when Obama was in office, he actually, and I said this to you when I interviewed you on my show, Obama deported more people than Trump did the first go round. But we didn't have this going on. So is it possible that the rhetoric of the president and the manner in which he chooses to verbalize his position on this issue may serve to antagonize the situation, and that is what is calling all of this. When you consider the fact that other president, you've acknowledged President Obama deported more people than President Trump before Biden went against Obama and decided to open borders. We didn't have these kind of issues until President Trump's second term. Even in his first term, it wasn't like this. So what level of culpability should the president and his administration have in regards to this?
The problem with his question is you didn't have Republicans demonizing Obama and ICE agents back then. You didn't have Republicans calling ICE agents Gestapo and Hitler and Mussolini or whatever. That was not happening. And that's exactly why the ICE agents weren't being targeted like they are now. This is a completely different situation. I don't even know why Stephen A. Smith would want to compare what ICE agents are going through now with what ICE agents were going through when Obama was in place, because this was not happening. You weren't having them demonized. You weren't having them called Hitler. You weren't having them called Gestapo. You weren't having them called all these crazy names, which pretty much put the target on their back, because now they're Hitler, now they're Nazis, now it's okay to do whatever you want to them. I don't know. You guys tell me. Comment down below and tell me what you guys think, because I think this is complete craziness and complete bullshit.